It's been said, or you've probably heard, that whenever somebody insults somebody else, or somebody says something bad about somebody else, or somebody rejects somebody else, it's not about the person, it's more about this person making the statement. When somebody rejects somebody, it's more about the rejector than the rejectee. When somebody insults somebody, the insult is more about the person making the insult than the person receiving the insult. When somebody says something bad about somebody, the bad thing is more about this person than this person. When somebody bullies somebody else, the actions of the bully are more about what's going on inside the mind of the bully than the person being bullied. You've no doubt heard this. You've no doubt experienced this. But what specifically does this mean? How can you specifically understand why this dynamic exists? And more importantly, how can you use your new understanding of this dynamic to become truly outcome independent so you're no longer hurt by insults or rejections? How can you become outcome independent so you no longer fear rejection whatsoever and you can operate with a true outcome independent mindset? So you can happily and easily move through the world and seduce and persuade and hypnotize anybody that you want to and find eager candidates that will be your willing love slaves. Well, the first step is to understand why this dynamic exists. And the basic dynamic is this. We all have an ego, a very powerful instinct, without which we wouldn't have evolved. And our ego makes us see the entire world in terms of us. Whenever we talk about things that we experience out in the world, other people, other experiences, world events, etc., we can only express these ideas through our own experiences, through our own opinions, through our own biases. Imagine a tribe of ancient hunter-gatherers hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. Those who had the strongest capability to express themselves rose to the top of the hierarchy. And these are the people that made the next generation's children. You can consider ancient life as hunter-gatherers as an ego flex contest. Every generation was an ego flex contest. And whoever won the ego flex contest, they made the kids of the next generation. And so here we are tens of thousands of years later, and we all have this ego that says everything is about me. It's not something that we consciously think, but it is this program that is always operating at the subconscious level. Whenever we express an idea, whenever we express something that we think is about out in the world, it's really our own interpretation of that. And the ego is a very slippery thing. It's hard to notice it within yourselves. It's very easy to notice this within others. But understanding how the ego operates and temporarily disengaging your ego is the secret master key to easy persuasion, hypnosis, and seduction. So the first step is to understand that this dynamic exists, that whenever anybody talks, they are really expressing their own opinion, their own perceptions, their own experiences about the world, even if they're talking about something ostensibly out in the world. And you can train yourself to see this. This is step number 2, to train yourself to see this in conversations. Next time you're in a conversation with a few people, just kind of take a back seat and watch how people talk to each other. No matter what the content of the conversation is, it will always be my opinion, my experience, my ideas about that content. Oh yes, but my experience, my ideas, my opinions about that content. Yes, but my experience, my ideas, my blah, blah, blah about that content. And you'll start to really get an experience that whenever people talk, no matter why they're talking, no matter who they're talking to, it's really an expression of their own ego, their own experiences. And consider that you exist in the minds of other people as a projection of their own internal experiences, their own internal biases. So when you walk up to somebody in public, you exist as a projection of their thinking. You exist as a projection of their biases. You exist as a projection of their experiences and their fears and their hopes and all the subconscious junk that they have. Now, another dynamic that's always operating, or that is frequently operating in the realm of approaching people cold and maybe asking for a phone number, is the idea of stranger danger. This is kind of a metaphor to explain that whenever we humans see someone we don't recognize, and that person is approaching us, that sets off ancient instinctive alarm bells, because ancient humans never really dealt with anybody that they didn't know. Their whole lives were surrounded by people that they knew. The only time they met people they didn't know, they were probably trying to kill them and eat them. So if you walk up to somebody as a stranger, not only are you a projection of their fears and their biases and their experiences, but you're triggering that stranger danger alarm. And they're always seeing the world through their own view. So if you want something from them, if you say, please give me your phone number, please take some time and take a risk with me, that is a very low probability event, because you've got two dynamics working against you. You're leading with what you want. That's kind of the presupposition for the reason for the approach. You're leading with what you want. But you're also triggering that stranger danger, and they're thinking about the world through what they want. And so that's why cold approaches is such a low probability, even if it's cold approaches for a romantic encounter, or if it's cold approaches in the realm of door-to-door sales, or door-to-door talking to people in the public and trying to get names and numbers to sell something to them later. This is why cold approaches is such a low probability thing. So what do you do instead? How can you leverage your understanding of the ego and how the ego operates to make life so much easier for you? Well, the third step is to, instead of seeing people in terms of what you want, which is the natural set point for the ego, instead of seeing them in terms of what you want, a sale, a sexual encounter, a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, instead train yourself to see them in terms of what they want. Wonder about what they want. Train yourself to see other people in terms of their dreams, their desires, their intentions, their fears, their greatest accomplishments. And you can do this by going in public, finding somebody interesting, just looking at them long enough to get an idea in your mind of what they might be, and just brainstorm some questions you could ask them if you were in a friendly conversation with them about their interests. What is your greatest desire? What is your greatest accomplishment? What is your biggest fear? If you had $10 million, what would you do with your life? How would you enjoy your life the most? And a great thing to practice is asking presuppositional questions that presuppose the validity of their ego. When you had the most success in your life, just before that event, how did you know that you would be so successful? When you decided to do something and it turned out well, how did you know before you made that decision that it would work out well? Presuppositional questions that presuppose something good about them, presuppose something good about the choices they made. And just brainstorm questions like this. And then when you're ready, step 4 is to approach people not with a leading idea of what you can get from them, but just a curiosity about them. And you can even preface the conversation by saying this: excuse me, I don't mean to bother you. I'm not trying to pick you up. I'm not trying to seduce you. I'm not trying to get you to join my cult or my MLM, but there's something about you that made me very curious. Could I ask you a question or two? And they'll probably say yes, and just ask them some of the questions. Now, you can approach this however you want. You could use your own style to start the conversation as friendly as you can, and just lead into these conversations, lead into these questions, lead into these presuppositional ego questions. And lead with expanding their ego from the inside out. That's the most important part. It's not exactly about what specific questions you ask, but that you have the orientation in your mind to kind of turn off your own short-term desires about what you want from them and build their ego up from the inside out by asking questions about their greatest desires, their greatest treasure, their greatest story, and get them to talk about themselves. Now, you don't want to be too heavy on the talking about themselves. You don't want to only talk about them. Keep about the 80-20 rule in mind. 80% of the time, expand their ego. 20% of the time, relate your own experiences, but always bring the conversation back to expanding their ego. This will eliminate stranger danger, and this will put them in a very, very good mood. And this is when the magic will start to happen. When you've turned off your own ego temporarily, when you've turned off your desires of what you want from them, and you expand their ego from the inside out, and they will start to feel really, really good, and they will start to subconsciously associate those good feelings with you. Everybody has this ancient instinct that says, talk about myself whenever I possibly can. Flex who I am to the world however I can, whenever I can, with whomever I can. But we rarely get to do that because we're always having these ego conversational battles. So when you give them an opportunity to really flex what they think are the best things about themselves without any pushback from your ego, that will make them feel fantastic in ways they've probably never experienced before. And that will make them feel so good, and they won't really know why. They won't really understand what's going on. They'll just know that this is a very, very fantastic conversation. They'll just have this feeling that this is one of the greatest conversations I've ever had. I don't know why. They'll say things like, wow, you're a really evolved person. This is really, really deep. This is really, really insightful. They won't know what's going on. They'll just have a lot of abstract, ambiguous words to describe what's happening, but they will know that it feels fantastic. And they will start to associate those fantastic things with you. And so again, the 4 basic steps to get to this process is, number 1, realize that everybody can only project their own ego. Everybody can only project their own experiences and opinions and ideas on the world. Step 2 is to watch this happen in conversations, to train yourself to feel this intuitively. Step 3 is to go somewhere in public and train yourself to think in terms of what's important to the other person. What are their biggest dreams? What are their biggest experiences? What are their greatest hopes? And step 4 is to lead with that mindset, lead with that orientation, the temporarily turning off of your ego and the temporary building up of their ego. And just build up their ego as much as you can. Build up their ideas as much as you can, and allow that complex equivalence to build, where they start to associate subconsciously those wonderful feelings with you. Then you can start to suggest whatever you want, whatever you would have otherwise suggested before had you not turned off your ego. Like if you want to walk up and get a phone number, think of that as the outcome, but think of that as a long-term outcome. So first, turn off your desire for the phone number, walk up, build up their ego. Then once they're feeling really good, they're fully engaged in the conversation, then you can suggest exchanging numbers and you'll have a much higher probability. And if they say no, it won't bother you, because by then you'll have trained yourself that everything they say is about them and it's got nothing to do with you. And that will significantly increase your capability of moving through life with true outcome independence and a true, genuine curiosity about other people and an ability to build up the best things about them. And that will make you a very, very charismatic, very seductive, very persuasive, very hypnotic person. So try these 4 steps out. It is a long game process. It does take consistent practice, but if you're willing to put in the consistent practice, you will get the fantastic results. So try it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to learn more about how to do things like this, check out the links below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.